Hi everyone, welcome to Artspace Mackay. My name is Tracy Heathwood. I'm the Gallery Director here at Artspace Mackay. And firstly, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we gather, the Yuwi people. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I extend my acknowledgement to all Aboriginal members of the Birri-Gubba Nation. So we're in conversation today with esteemed North Queensland artist Ron McBurnie on the eve of his Artspace Mackay exhibition In Search of Arcadia. In 2019 and 2020, Ron completed an extended artist residency here in Mackay, capturing beloved landscapes and views on plein air or in the open air. The resulting suite of works on paper has come together in this truly stunning exhibition, which is such a celebration of our region. Thanks so much, Ron. In the last few years, you've been creating on plein air drawings and paintings in many different places. What motivated you to do this?
The original motivation, I guess, came from working with a friend of mine, Ewan McLeod, in northern New South Wales. And that was the first time I actually painted on plein air in a serious way. And then from that experience of working, looking toward Mount Warning through the cane fields, I then started to do some more painterly and plein air works in Townsville and the region in which I lived. And I found that the type of paints that Ewan used, the acrylics, were very difficult for me to use. But I really liked the process. And it wasn't until I went overseas to a little place in France called Alarak that I started to try different materials for plein air work. And I took 2 fountain pens, and they were just little brown ink fountain pens, I think, and I started to use those on paper. I found this wonderful valley near the house that I was living in, and each morning I'd go out and work with the fountain pens on paper. And I found that experience quite wonderful because it was very immediate, and whatever was there that morning I was capturing. And so from there it developed, and I started to use watercolour. I was also aware of some of the printmakers like Frank Brangwyn and Seymour Hayden, who would take plates out into the landscape and work on their etching plates from life and then take them back to the studio and etch them. The only issue with plates for me was that the images were reversed when they were printed. So you get a reversed image of a particular place. Yeah. And that can be a bit of an issue with people who would say, oh, that's really not where I live, that's the reverse image of it. So that's why I tend to use drawing and painting rather than printmaking from life.
Would it be fair to say that they are drawings and paintings very much inspired by your printmaking background, by etching? Would that be a fair?
Very much so, and some people have noted that. So there's a great relationship between some of the sort of pen and ink drawn works in this exhibition with printmaking techniques. Yes.
Yeah, that comes through. There's a lot of physical challenges to contend with when you're working in the open air like that. You have a shifting light, lots of different weather conditions, you have insects, animals, human activity. Why is it important to you to develop your landscape works on plein air rather than just the comforts of the studio?
For me, it's you sort of getting to understanding more about that place than taking a photograph of it and going back to the studio. So it's seeing that place in detail, and it also experiencing that place as it is, with the heat, with the mozzies, with the whatever you've got at the time, and feeling like you're in a way part of the place.
Yeah.
And that's important to me.
I think so, and I love that idea that on plein air works capture some of that sort of energy of the actual time and place. I feel like that comes through.
Yeah, I think hopefully it does. I think unfortunately there's a sort of a limit to the size that you can work on plein air. So I can work up to a certain size, and then the larger works I have to rely on studies and photographs that I've taken and then take that back to the studio, because otherwise it's just too large.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're working like that, when you're working on plein air outside, do you see yourself as part of the landscape, or are you an outsider looking in?
I think when I come into the landscape, I feel like a bit of an outsider, particularly the first time I go to a particular place. But then when I come back to it a few times, it's like a ritual of going to the same place. And some of the places I've been to, particularly the ones closer to my home, I've been to maybe 10 times to finish one work.
Yeah.
So you're going back and you're seeing the different sort of light. The light has changed, or there's more cloud, there's more sun and so on. So you get a sense of the changes at different times of the year. And gradually I think you know that landscape, that landscape starts to imprint itself on your memory. And that for me is really important, and I guess that's the way I might feel at one with that landscape.
Yeah. And so does that is there a spiritual resonance or a connection to those Australian landscapes when you're working in that way?
Yeah, I guess you could call it a spiritual connection. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it's as you mentioned, that feeling of being one with the landscape, but also that you almost like forget yourself when you're there. You're part of it, and you know, I've often said to one of my friends, I could die here, and I'd be happy. You know, I could feel my body would be at peace at this place if I was dead. You know, in some places you think, you visit, you think, oh God, I wouldn't want to die here. It's terrible. But other places you feel at peace with, and I think that's that spiritual feeling.
Yeah. I think one that stands out for me is the work of Kinchin Dam. It's a beautiful work of a moment that all of us in North Queensland understand so well, and it's that moment of very heavy clouds. We understand that it's just about to rain, and that feeling and that anticipation, I think, that we all understand so well up here is captured beautifully in that work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was an interesting moment, because it was a sort of late afternoon, and there was this heavy cloud. It was an amazingly sort of humid afternoon, and it was like it was going to sort of rain buckets.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be great to record. The next day I came back to actually record it, but it was raining, so it happened. So I did some studies and then worked on it from there.
Yeah, fantastic. And in this exhibition, In Search for Arcadia, we see some of your own personal collection of books and prints shown alongside your original artworks. Can you tell us a little bit about what that private collection of works means to you?
It's a collection that's grown over a long period of time. I would always look at books and art books, art journals for information and references in my own work, because I was always interested in the history of what had come before in my area, and that area at that time was printmaking, particularly etching. So I'd always be looking at what other people had done and trying to learn from them. And then I found that I could actually buy some of these original works for not as much as I expected. And many years ago I started to just buy a few of these works, and I would then be able to look right up close and personal with those works and get lots of information from them and learn heaps. And then the collection grew and it got bigger and bigger. And gradually I started to sort of collect groups of things. So it was like groups of artists that worked together in the same area and build up a sort of a collection, so I sort of understood the world of those particular artists that I was interested in. And I would show those to my students at uni, and they would hopefully get a lot from them as well. So and the collection has sort of grown according to my interests in printmaking, but also the directions in my own work.
Yeah.
And that was, so having those works here is really nice, because I think people might be able to see, people coming to the exhibition might be able to see links between these works and some of the ancient works that we've included.
It's such a treat for us. Like you said, it's sometimes difficult to get that level of detail in an illustration in a book. To see these prints on display here is really quite incredible, and to see the mastery of those early printmakers.
Yeah, it's great for me to see them too, because you know, they're always just sitting at home in storage. So it's nice to see them out, and you know, so that other people can experience them as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Fine.
It's great. And when you were completing your residency here, you used social media quite a lot. Can you tell us about how this worked and what it meant for you?
Well, I think from our original discussions, we thought it would be fun to, because it was about this area, this region, that people in the community could give us suggestions as to places that I could visit and work from. And so we used that, and there were friends that suggested places as well, and then everything moved from there.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite know what I'd be drawing when I came down each time. I knew the starting point, but then the other places were like mystery places to me, and I'd have to find them, and then find a spot to work in, and find a shaded spot and all that sort of thing. So it's not the easiest thing to find a place that's suitable at that time of the day, because sometimes it was very hot as well.
That's right. It was a bit of a magical mystery tour for us too. We were able to, it was diarised through social media, and that was so great to kind of follow your adventures and your journeys and to see where that residency took you.
Yeah, it was fun for me because I got to see places that I would never have gone to.
Yeah.
You know, I'd just be travelling through or catching up with a few friends here. So, you know, I was able to really look at these places, and they were, a lot of them were really a surprise to me, which is wonderful.
Great, yes. And did you come across any funny stories while you were out on your residency, or meet interesting people?
Well, I met some interesting people. I met a wonderful woman called Roz, who had this great dog called Willis, and the back of her place was this spectacular view of Slade Point and the whale lookout, the lookout where you could watch whales and things there. And that was wonderful, and I realised how rocky the terrain was there, and how windy it was. Because when I was working under some pandanus trees, it was really hard just to hold my paper down on the board. But I met some wonderful people, and sometimes the suggestions would take me to places that didn't exist. Like there was a cane mill that I was to go to in one particular town, and then after asking a while, there were no cane mills in that particular town, so it must have been another town nearby. So it was a bit of a magical mystery tour. But also around Youngalla area, I went to some amazing places that I didn't know of, like diggings and other places like that. So it was great.
Have you come away with a favourite spot or something that's really stuck
Well,
with you?
I did really like Kinchin Dam, and I think that's a really interesting place and quite a changeable place as well. I think the last time I took my wife there to see Kinchin Dam, I said, there's lots of black swans here and all the bird life, but there was actually a speedboat competition there, and there were no birds, like three swans. So we'll have to go back there again. But there's places, I think, like even the mouth of the Pioneer River and the beautiful walk you can do from the boat round the Pioneer River through this beautiful grassland to one of the beaches. That's a wonderful walk, and it's so close to the centre of town.
Yes.
You know, the stories related to the Leichhardt tree on the Pioneer River as well are really interesting, and so I've learned a lot about the history of the region as well.
I think that's really an interesting point of this exhibition is, whilst you've captured some beautiful, kind of almost nostalgic, quite romantic landscapes, there are some depictions of areas in this region that tell of a darker past and tell us something about our history, and I appreciate that those works are represented here too. And like you said, I think this is an opportunity for even locals to learn something more about the region that they call home.
Yes, and I think hopefully people coming to the exhibition will see those works and maybe have often their own stories that relate to those places, because some of the places everyone here will know, other places maybe not. So everyone brings to an exhibition like this their own particular story. And my story is going to be different to your story.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I know that we do some work with a fabulous community arts organisation in town called Crossroad Arts, and they've been talking a lot about memory. They do a performance in the gallery program, and so they work with people with different accessibility, and they are enjoying looking at these works and bringing up their own memories of the places that they recognise in this exhibition.
I think memory is very important in different ways, and for me, making work, because my memory is not great, the making of a piece of work, whatever the work is a way of me remembering what was happening at the time that I was making the work. And then when the work's exhibited, I have other memories of when it was exhibited. So it's sort of, it's a thing that it's layered and it grows as well.
So you live in Townsville, you've spent this time in Mackay. I know you've spent a lot of time in the Atherton Tablelands doing similar residencies.
Yes.
Are you at a point where you can define what it is that's unique about North Queensland and the landscape? So I'm thinking, how does it differ to the pastoral landscapes that you capture in your time in Europe?
I think that the French landscape, because I worked there a bit in the British landscape, it seems to me much quieter. And when I'm sitting in France, I think, oh, it's really quiet here.
Yeah.
And then you'll hear one bird in the distance and think, oh, they've got birds here. Whereas in Australia or North Queensland, it's like crazy sort of noises.
Yeah.
We have crazy birds here, and there's a lot more. It's a crazier landscape as well. It's not as manicured. It's a wilder landscape, and I think that's why people coming from overseas love this landscape, because a lot of it's sort of unexpected and it's different. It's not like what they've experienced in other places.
Yeah.
And so I think that even though there's towns and there's small cities and things that are civilized, you just go a little bit out and it's crazy.
Well, the Como Tuera Trail is a great example of that, isn't it? It's a very short drive from the centre of town.
Very short drive.
And then you find yourself immersed in this really kind of thick.
Yeah, but it's also got things like the leftovers from a sort of a cyclone tornado that hit there some years ago, and you can see these bits of corrugated iron caught up in some of the trees, and it's sort of the history of the place is there in front of you, and so it's a very interesting place to visit.
And those works are so you're so close, they're almost kind of suffocating in the way that there's no horizon.
Yeah, you become lost in the trees in that place, and I tried to do that in the drawings where the trees are sort of, you can't get a sense of space. It's a very enclosed space in comparison to sort of the normal views that I do, like the Youngborough view. And some of those other views. There's not a lot of that in those Como works.
And for me, I think, there's something about that captures the essence of North Queensland and this place, I think. Those experiences of being out in the bush.
And I think also the heat is something that people coming from overseas, the sort of humidity that takes people a while to get accustomed to.
And what do you hope that audiences take away from In Search of Arcadia?
Well, I think related to what I was saying before, I hope they can relate to the works and then add their own stories to the works that they're seeing, add their own experiences. So it's always good for me to hear from people about what they think of the work and how they respond to it, and maybe see that part of the landscape through maybe a different lens, a different focal point, so that they're then going back to that place and thinking, oh yeah, now I can see that, I can experience something else about one of these places.
That's certainly what it's done for me. As a local that's lived here most of my life, I do see these places in a completely different light, and I thank you for that.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
And there's it's almost kind of like a love letter to the region. There's such genuine affection for these landscapes and for the places that you. Yeah,
I really enjoyed the whole experience of this residency. It was so much fun.
Well, it was fun for us too, Ron, and great to have a chat to you today about the exhibition. We look forward to seeing all of you come into Artspace Mackay. The exhibition's on show from today. Saturday morning we open the 27th of February from 10 a.m, and the exhibition runs through until the 16th of May, certainly not to be missed. Thank you.